Welcome to Overcome Podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to talk with Maxine Lisot, a black belt, third dan in karate, and ranked top 100 in her weight category. She has an amazing comeback story from one of her injuries back in 2016, 15 and 16, and she has a lot of experience on this area. Now she is a coach, but still competing. As a matter of fact, she's going to compete this month and has some very interesting insights to share with all of us. Stay tuned. Maxine Lisot, welcome to the Overcome Podcast. Thank you very much for taking the time on your busy day to be here with us.
Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Maxine, we met back in 2015. I still remember that day. You were on the book signing session at this Destination with Jody. And I remember you read half of the book during the time that you were there. It was crazy. Yeah, thank you. And the podcast is about overcome, and I've been following you since the day we met on your journey through karate. Competitor is not only that you teach, but you also compete. So
Right.
I've seen a lot of bruises and a lot of things going on. And you had a baby 1 year ago. I was actually remember that you were pregnant and doing some deadlifts. I thought that was awesome. Uh, so tell us a little bit about this journey. I think that there was some posts that you mentioned as soon as you got pregnant about you were not powerless and it was almost like you were adjusting yourself during that time to continue doing what you were doing, but of course you had to take a break, but you did until you could, right?
Yeah, it always, for me, I don't know if it's from being stubborn or creative, but I'm always wanting to find a way to keep going and training. Obviously, when I found out I was having a baby, I could no longer compete, but I still had this thought in the back of my mind, like, well, I can still do some things and stay in it. And quite honestly, that's been very characteristic of a lot of my injuries throughout my competitive career. If I literally lose one leg, I'll try to make the other leg as good as possible. And that's carried with me for a very long time.
But when you're pregnant, did you stop training karate, or were you just lifting, or you were doing a little bit of both?
I had to stop doing contact work, of course. So that's why I switched to doing a lot of pad work and more boxing stuff. I kept lifting until it no longer felt good to. And if it just the big thing was it had to become much more of a solo training.
Yeah, yeah. More drills. Were you still be able to kick when you were pregnant? Because I
It got,
remember it was a big belly.
it got to a point where I, more so because of the hip mobility
Yeah.
and just the laxity in it, I couldn't kick anymore. It was too painful. So I got really good at punching.
Since you had a baby, did you compete, or you've been out since then?
I am actually planning on competing a week from tomorrow. I return to my first tournament.
Really? That's
Yeah.
amazing. Great timing. So you prepping?
I've been, honestly, since COVID started, I've gone back into really seriously training where I've been working with an international coach, Denis Morozov from Ukraine. He's been exceptional. And obviously it's over Zoom, but, I've been able to make that slow comeback. And in some ways, COVID, with the cancellation of so many tournaments, it gave me more time to prepare. And so it was, for me, a secret blessing. Obviously, it's been a very difficult year for the most
Yeah.
part,
Yeah.
but I'm really looking forward to this tournament, and as well as half the country, because it's one of the first big karate tournaments since
Yeah,
COVID.
that was what I was going to ask. Is this the first big one since COVID outbreak?
I would say so. The last major one would have been in February or March, right before all the shutdown started.
Is it going to be here in Texas now?
It will be at the Westin Galleria in Dallas. Yeah,
Oh,
and
awesome.
you could actually watch it webcasted. So
That's awesome. I'll make sure to watch for sure.
Thank you.
And do you think the turnout will be big because people are just waiting to compete, or do you think it's still people are still not really fully,
Prepared.
receptive to contact with all this COVID stuff?
I think it's going to depend on the division. For example, I'm not the only one competing because I'm also a coach, and some of my kids' divisions are pretty big, like 8 to 10 people. And then I have other students where there's no one. So I think it's you either have people that are really hardcore and ready to go, and then you have other people that are going to wait. I know my division personally, it's kind of there's my kilogram category, even though
Mm-hmm.
they're not real weigh-ins, and then the open weight category. I figure open weight will be a very good size and have a really good repertoire of athletes. So I'm
Yeah,
looking at that.
that's awesome. Now, talking about karate and the competitions, and then you started saying that you had some injuries. There was any particular injury that you had during your karate career that you had to really stop training because of that injury that required any surgery or long recover?
I'm just trying to think how to summarize it fast. And like I said before, usually when I'm injured, I'm always so determined to find a way to train. In 2015, right around the time you met me, I actually had hernia surgery. I had an abdominal hernia,
Hmm.
and I had to get surgery in April of that year. But the month before, I was competing at the Pan American Championships, and I actually earned bronze.
Hmm.
And I was really limited in my skill set of what I could do, so I just became incredibly exceptional at it. And I was able to produce a medal there and produce a medal at the North American Cup. And then I had surgery in April, and I was completely sidelined for a good 4 to 6 months because I thought I could come back from it quickly, and it was a very vicious recovery just because of having abdominal surgery. That would be one of the ones.
Yeah, during
But
4 to 6 months that you were sidelined, knowing you that you are an extremely active person, how that really affected you mentally? It was tough to stay out.
it's hard. It's like, when you see a caged tiger that remembers
Yeah,
living in the wild, and you could tell it's just waiting for that opportunity to get out. You feel that. You feel very restless. People tell you to spend your energy elsewhere, but when it kind of happens overnight, it's
exactly.
it's very difficult to do.
That's
And
exactly what I'm feeling. I feel like I'm not myself anymore. This part of losing the identity, is what really drove me crazy for months.
yeah, I understand. I'm glad you're healing. It's like you're back to working out, which is good.
Yeah, at least upper body. Lower body is gonna take a little longer. But on your case with the hernia surgery, did you have to stop everything, lifting, everything? You had completely stop.
Yeah, because the doctor said, oh, in 6 weeks you can go back to normal activity. So in my head, I thought, oh, okay, so in 6 weeks I can go back to lifting, sprinting. And then 6 weeks arrived, and he was like, no, you could go back to walking or picking up groceries. Um, and it was a big wake up call. I'd never had something so significant or I had to stop training. And I was actually originally thinking I was going to go to the national championships that year, and I had to get a medical exemption to do the trials the following year. So it was a bit overwhelming. And to be honest, it's like I finally was at a point where I started recovering and training, and then I was sidelined with another major injury, which really impacted my life.
Oh, really?
And
Which one was that?
well, what happened was, so I was finally recovered from hernia surgery, and I was training for the team trials in January 2016. And 5 weeks before the event, I was in a major car crash. My car was totaled. I had a head injury on the left side with a concussion. Of
Oh,
course,
I
the doctor
actually remember
said,
those. Actually remember that story. I remember seeing the pictures.
yeah. And of course, the doctor said 4 to 6 weeks, and then you can go back. So at 5.5 weeks, I jumped in and went to my trials. I made it to the finals, and I got a second concussion. And it was significant where I developed post concussion syndrome. I had a total change in my personality. I actually had to go on medical leave from my work. There's such a significant series of events that followed it that changed the course of my life. It was
Wow.
I gotta admit.
How was the rehab during that time?
it it was a lot of up and down where I would think I'm making improvements and then you just get knocked back. Like at first I just tried to rest, but then I tried to go back to training or working because I was a full-time teacher at the time, and I'd have lapses in my memory, or I'd start having panic attacks, and my affect was totally changed where I would just be totally depressed, not want to be around anyone, and of course this whole time I had qualified for the Pan American team and was supposed to be getting ready for Pan American championships, but I knew there was something significantly wrong with me.
Hmm.
And some of my coaches recognized it and were encouraging me, hey, you need to get more help, more help. And then I'd have other coaches telling me, don't exaggerate your symptoms to the doctor. They were acting like I was perfectly fine because they didn't understand the severity of a concussion injury. And it finally came down to where I had to have a coach really step in and tell me, you need to stand up for yourself and say you're hurt and get appropriate treatment. And I was going to this one doctor who wasn't helping. So I finally had to, assert myself to the national coach saying, I won't be able to compete. I had to go to a different doctor. But it was really scary. Like at one point I thought of killing myself because I was so changed in my head. Like things weren't right at all. Like
What was that, 2016 or 17?
this was 2016. So it was the whole first half of that year was like that.
Wow.
And at that point, when you're that injured, you start to find out who actually cares or
Oh
doesn't care.
yeah, you said something that I've been saying for a long time. You realize who your friends are during this time. Some people will go away. Some people will only be around you when you are at your peak.
Yeah.
When you are down, some people just disappear.
And it's really scary when, even though, and you can understand this, where karate, it's a team sport in that you have a team, but your event is individual. And all of a sudden, the rug's pulled up from under you, you've lost your ability to compete, and the way that teammates or coaches treat you changes radically, where you're no longer a usable feature for
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
and people just think you're going to disappear and never come back. And that
That
really,
hurts. That hurts a
yeah.
lot. That hurts a
No.
lot. Mainly, as I said, mentally is a struggle. Probably, I think physically you were hurt, but mentally was much more.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah, but and you're right. Same thing with judo and jiu-jitsu is an individual competition, but there is a team behind, and sometimes you have the same feeling, I would say,
Exactly.
because you're not able to produce, you're not able to be on the training, so it's almost like, well, you're not contributing anyway.
Yeah, and unless you have a coach that can center in on what you can still do, even if it's just sports psychology or recovery or just personal growth, a lot of coaches will leave you for dead. And it sounds really harsh to say that, but unless you have a certain coach that understands that you can produce something, even when you're at the bottom of the abyss,
Hmm.
they will leave you behind,
And
especially in a sport when it comes to trying to find the cream of the crop.
right, and what brought you back? How was the comeback for you? It was with help of a coach, or was only self determination?
Well, one, obviously getting the appropriate medical help was a big deal. I spent a lot of my personal money not paid by insurance to get neurological treatment, like things that weren't with medicine, things that required me to go out of the state. But a big thing that gave me that push to come back was when karate was formally put into the Olympics. So in August of 2016, the announcement was made that karate would go into the 2020 Olympics. And I was like, well, I could try. I could totally try for that goal. And even though I was kind of at baseline at zero, I was like, I have nothing to lose.
So
And
this year will be the first year karate will make Olympics.
yeah, it's, well, obviously now 2021, but it's going in as a demo sport. So of course Japan will have all of their athletes because it's the host country, but there had been a whole 18-month process for athletes to try and qualify, and there's going to be one more event in May of next year to get the final seats filled.
When you say it's going to be a demo, is just a trial, and then but it's going to be incorporated, or that we would just try?
What happened is apparently they're having it in 2021 at this point, but it's not being included in the Paris edition in 2024. And that's what had happened about a year or so ago with the announcement. But of course, now with COVID, I feel like everything's going to be up in the air. And naturally, karate athletes are trying to get the sport to remain in, And I know for like wrestling, it was booted out and then booted in. And I know for a lot of karateka, a lot of karate athletes, they're wanting to keep this in because it's been the dream for so many years is to make karate an Olympic sport.
Yeah. Well, so the comeback was you were just going through that direction that you have a lot of medical help and everything, but knowing you, I think that you also had a lot of self-discipline and determination to come back better, right? What drove you that? Just like I want to be better than I was. I want to prove. What was the main motivation for you to come back?
I felt like I hadn't reached my best yet. I for having had a hernia this around the same or just the year prior, and I was able to come home with a Pan American medal. I was that year the only female fighter to have done it on the U.S. team. I was the underdog. No one expected that out of me. Sorry, my cat. So suddenly I just had this new efficacy in myself, thinking like, what else am I capable of?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't want to deny myself that chance. And so it was like, I just started putting in the work where I really dialed in my nutrition. I made sure my brain was healthy. I had made considerations to change weight classes, but I was like, I need to be fit. I need to be smart. I need to be in the prime. And that was a big thing that caused me to leap into international competition in 2017. I was traveling to so many countries and tournaments throughout that year, even though I continue to have health issues. But
Oh,
it
so
was,
your comeback did happen only in 2017. It took one more than a year then.
it's never a one-time event that makes your comeback. As much as it seems easy to see it that way, it's always going to be baby steps.
Yeah, it's a
But
progression. But when I
yeah,
say the comeback is like the first competition after the whole turmoil, right? Because I think that the first one after the whole turmoil is probably the difficult one because you are still adjusting and you like, am I still able to do this? So there is a lot of doubts in your head probably on the first one. After that one, you are naturally progressing in the right direction.
yeah, you can say that, but at the same time, okay, I was injured in January 2016 with the head injury, and I was able to return to competing in December 2016. And I remember I was so giddy, like I was shaking, I was so excited. It was like, like a kid's birthday party, and my coaches were like, calm down, like they were really trying to downplay what the significance to me, like
Yeah.
this rebirth. And if anything, I missed the enthusiasm I had at that tournament because all the subsequent tournaments started to have a lot of pressure because all of a sudden it was like, okay, now you're on this journey. It has to be really hardcore,
Right.
and like that first event, if anything, there's just a lot of joy because finally I'm back to doing what I want to do. And
So that's interesting because you would think also that you had some sort of a mixed emotions, probably some hesitant moments of not, for example, not getting kicked in the head, right? So you were never concerned about overprotecting, over defense or something like that to not get hurt again.
I would say that came back later as I started to get into higher level competition, especially even though the person who gave me my concussion, it wasn't her fault since I already was injured beforehand. That person haunted me to the point where I was chasing after a different weight class. So it came down to where if it involved something with that person, that fear was there.
Hmm.
But if it was in an event where she wasn't there, then it was more doable. And it took me a very long time to finally confront that fear, partly because when I got injured again, it was by someone else, which made me realize, hey, it's not just one person. But then secondly, when I finally had a rematch against her, I didn't win, but I came out knowing that I could still be healthy. And that takes a long time to overcome.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a great point. It takes a long time to overcome. When you think that you were like 100% mentally and physically, like probably 2018,
I don't know if
or not
I've ever
even that.
I don't know if I've ever been mentally like good to go. Because it's I, I didn't ever gave myself a chance. There is things outside of my control that would affect me in terms of my health or mindset, and then there are things within my control where I would sabotage myself. You know, a lot of negative self talk, or maybe not taking the initiative to change my coaching environment or personal environment when I should have.
Hmm.
So I feel like there are a lot of there's a lot of anchors throughout that journey that limited what I was capable of, and I'll be sure of saying some of it was my doing, and you kind of have to learn. You have to learn to accept that. You know, I felt like, quite honestly, my closing point of success was my last tournament before being pregnant in December 2018. When at that point I had changed my coaching environment, I had changed the environment of who my teammates or former teammates were, and I was able to come out successful and win a tournament. And even though it wasn't the tournament that would get me into the Olympics, or the biggest tournament on earth, it was still something where I came out winning, and I was able to do it on my terms,
Yeah.
and I was able to do it as healthy as I could at the time.
And how many matches did you have on that tournament?
That day I had 3 matches, and I had 2 where I won kilo, and then I had 1 in open weight, which at that point I was doing for fun because I was injured already. So
But you were competing on the same weight division that you were before, or you were up or down?
it was in a lightweight category, although I was heavier than I normally would be, because I used to compete in the 55 kilogram 121,
Hmm.
and at a lot of local tournaments they just split it in two between, like, plus 60 or minus 60. So I was still in the same range of fighters I normally would face, but my body was really different at the time, and I actually didn't realize at that tournament I was pregnant. So that was
Oh,
part
you
of,
were already pregnant that time, and you
yeah.
didn't know.
So, and that's kind of part of what I give credit to my daughter for winning that last tournament. But that was kind of the thing, where at a point where, even though maybe in some ways I was at a low emotionally or physically, I was able to really go over those things, accept what I couldn't have, and then went after what I wanted. And in that event, I was able to win.
On the next one, which is you said this year, are you gonna still on the same category, same weight division?
I'm going ahead and doing the heavyweight, because I just want to fight a different group of girls, and then I know if any of the lightweight girls, I'll meet them in the open weight category.
Hmm.
I don't want to think anything about weight. I don't want someone to look
Yeah,
at
you
me and
don't have.
go,
At least you don't have to diet pretty hard and everything. That's the good thing about going on the heavy. I usually compete super heavy, so that way I don't
right.
need to to drop a whole lot. Probably drop 4 pounds, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I don't know how I'm going to do next weekend, even though I can say I've been training very hard up to it, but everyone has variables, and I might do great, I might not do great, but I'm not going to lose because I'm going to put myself in that position. If I lose, the girl is much better than me. It's not because
You
I
sabotage yourself, right?
yeah, exactly.
No, that's a great mindset. It's very important, and probably if you think that way, COVID probably was a good thing for you from the sense of this whole break. You took a whole break for a long time. It gave you time to reflect. It gave time
Yeah.
to bounce back and now and focus on different things, on your daughter and your family, and perhaps even create a better balance right now.
Yeah, I would agree, and it comes down to where, and I know you can relate to this because you have a daughter, where when we're injured and we're wanting to go after a goal, our kids are going to see how we handle that. Are we just going to completely lay down and give up, or are we going to moan and lament and kind of, half-heartedly go after it? Or are we going to show our kids, like, you can aggressively go after something within the range you're allowed? And that's what I'm trying to do, because at some point my daughter, she'll remember what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And maybe she won't ever see me compete, but I hope she'll at least remember my worth ethic and the example that I want her to have when she grows up.
Yeah, yeah, that's a excellent point. When did the school that you teach resume the classes with the COVID stuff?
We were shut down in March, but we continued on Zoom, and we were able to come back to in-person training in June. So, give or take, we've been able to,
So you were
you know,
for the next competition. Were you training, or you were just doing Zoom sessions for yourself? I'm talking about your own prep.
right. Um, so during the lockdown, I was able to continue my training over Zoom. And at that point, Zoom allows you to train with anyone in the world. So I was able to create this huge network of people internationally. Regarding people physically to train with, probably back in October was when we finally felt comfortable enough to let our students start doing contact work with each other, because we weren't sure about tournaments. We didn't want to put anyone at a risk when they didn't necessarily need it. But once we heard of a tournament coming, it starting at the beginning of October, we were like, okay, let's go back. And so for me, what would happen is during the week, I'd do all my Zoom training sessions with my coach. And then on the weekends, when I would have actual team training where I was the coach, I'd also physically get to work with people as well. So it's not optimal
Mm-hmm.
for someone that's trying to compete in a black belt division. So I had to make it a focus of quality versus quantity in my trainings when it came to partner drills and partner work.
So the sparring only happens on the weekend.
For
Yeah.
now, as we wait to see what happens with all the lockdowns and election stuff, our plans to go back to almost everything normal in January other than masks. So
And do you have someone on your level to sparring with at your dojo?
I have a few girls that are better than they realize they are, but I acknowledge the fact that I came from a system that produces competitive athletes, and my school is very traditional, and we don't have that pipeline yet. So I recognize that maybe some of my athletes don't have the caliber and experience I do, but I'll still push them to believe that they can become that way. So, if they do something better than me, great. I'm learning from it. If I show them something and they learn from it, great. And I have to accept the fact that no, you're never going to have ideal training partners. I'm never going to have an ideal schedule,
Hmm.
but I'm going to make the best of it. Same thing. I still have certain injuries that I carry now as an older adult versus when I was 19, but I can still have a strong training session and still improve each time.
Correct. Yeah, that's great. Now, with your wisdom and experience, do you feel like you can work more smart to prevent some of the injuries? Because we are way more aware of positioning and all those things, rather than in the past that probably were more explosive and not really measuring some of this stuff. I think that all those injuries also brought a lot of experience, right?
Yeah, and I think a big thing is knowing when to back off or stop. That's been my biggest struggle, because a lot of my injuries, I think, was either overuse, where I would try to do something to the point of breaking, or I was attempting a weight, for a lifting session when I should have just rested that day. And at the time in my head, I thought no. And if anything, being sleep deprived, raising my daughter has helped me learn to accept you're just going to go at a lower capacity today. And I think, other than having one flare up with my back, but that's from an old injury that's come and gone over the years, I've been able to stay safe. And I know for a lot of women coming back postpartum, they'll either have knee or hip problems or other stuff. And, I'm doing my best. And I want to at least show other women too that you can still take care of yourself, but you don't have to resign and give up competing or whatever personal endeavor you had.
Yeah. Are you lifting, training, weight training every day, or are you like doing 3 times a week?
It's not frequent. I would say once or twice a week I'm lifting now, and I just prioritize certain lifts. I could prioritize squat, pressing, and deadlift movements, or squat, bench pressing, and power clean movements. So I'm going back to a bit of the old school
Hmm.
things that I did when I was a teenager, when I was starting to get strong. because I just don't have time to be in the gym for 2 hours.
Yep.
When you're trying to work and trying to take care of a child, like you have to prioritize this
And
stuff.
also, there are some exercises that will be much better for you as a competitor, karate competitor, than others. You don't need to do isolation exercise. You need to do those core explosive exercises much better anyway.
Exactly. And it's the same thing where I'm not trying to cut weight. So I've really eliminated a lot of the cardio work because it would trash me with my recovery. And if it's not making me fast and explosive right now, I can't take my time to do that because I don't have as much time
Oh,
anymore. I
so
have to
that's
accept.
interesting. So you don't need you really don't need cardio for karate. I mean, is how many minutes the match? Like 5 minutes?
Well, it's like 3 minutes with stop time. So it's a more matter of like probably the best type of cardio would be like doing fartlek runs where it's like you jog and then you sprint, jog and sprint,
Mm,
jog and sprint, the whole interval of your running. If you just do long, slow distance running, it can help drop your fat, but it's dealing with different muscle fibers and a whole different energy
yeah.
system. And I honestly felt like the time when I was always cutting weight and running, I was never quite as explosive as when I got to focus more on Olympic lifts or sprint work. So I've had to kind of change gears on that now.
Cool, cool. And I was reading your bio, and you also did judo some time ago, right?
Yeah, briefly. Not at the East Side Dojo. There was an instructor at the former school I trained at where he was part of USA Judo, and I technically tested for ninth Q, but then I didn't really get to continue after that. That's honestly something I'd like to do, kind of for fun.
Yeah. How do you compare? How do you compare the randori in judo to a match in karate? Because I feel like the randori is very intensive. From the cardio perspective, it's like 5 minutes, very intensive. I'm not sure about how that compares with karate.
Right. And any type of grappling sport is going to really test you. I briefly got to cross train with some of the wrestling teams in the Plano area and got to learn skills there. And it's like any type of grappling groundwork, it will gas you. Karate can, but the advantages with the footwork and the movement, which would be more reminiscent of boxing or taekwondo, you have more opportunities to recover. And for me, with striking, it kind of uses a different set of
Hmm.
muscle, fibers and different energy pathways so that, you can punch really explosively as a single and then move or recover. And then again, throw another, explosive
Right,
single where
right.
if you're in a clinch, you can't relax in the clinch.
Hmm.
And same thing karate, you can't relax in the distance, but you can at least maintain a certain distance to recover.
Nowadays, do you feel more fulfilled as a competitor, or as a coach? Like, what is the fulfillment for you have one of your pupils that won a tournament, or you winning a tournament?
Well, I could probably tell you more about that next weekend, part of but I would say coaching right now, just because when you become a parent, you realize how self-centered you were before having a kid. And I feel like becoming a mom has really changed the way that I want to coach, where obviously before I would be very all giving as a coach, but I also wanted to be super elite prime as an athlete. And now it's where I understand my coaching and athleticism may not always increase at the same time, but I know, like, okay, as long as I can see growth in my students, I'm going to be okay, because at this point now, my growth's going to be different from theirs. And of course, with COVID, with the lack of tournaments, we tried to host like, inter school tournaments or online tournaments. And, me trying to advocate for my athletes to stay competitive and compete, I realized that also forced me to put more priority as a coach.
Yes. So next
And
weekend you're gonna have a very unique experience because you're gonna be coaching and competing for the first time.
yeah, I've done it before, but not with the level of ownership that I have now. And that's something I'm really thankful for, where maybe before I would try to coach and I felt like my experience was valid, but I wasn't necessarily in an environment where I could focus on coaching as much as I do now. So now it's where if my athlete performs really well, I know they did their best. And if my athlete performs poorly, I'll take ownership of that and recognize, okay, there's certain skills or strategies I need to better address and teach to them, or maybe a certain work ethic I need to adjust in them. And so that, to me, I am pretty excited. And because the tournament's split into 2 days to help with the distancing, I can focus exclusively on coaching the first
Oh,
day.
that's great.
Since
So it's gonna be Saturday and Sunday.
So, and they're going to have like the younger group go on Saturday, and then us older people go on Sunday. And I almost like coaching the younger kids more because they have no fear. They're either totally scared and learn to get over it, or they have no fear whatsoever. And so you just let them go for
Is
it.
this gonna be a tournament where you wear protection gear and everything?
Yeah, I mean, we always wear pads and shin and instep covers. They're going to make athletes wear their masks until they walk into the ring.
Right.
So once you walk in to do your kata or kumite, you get to take the mask off for that time period. So I'm really, if anything, I'm trying to tell athletes and tell myself, like, okay, when you take your mask off, that's like you unleashing everything, 'cause that's the only time you get to enjoy not wearing a mask in the whole video.
Yeah.
So,
Make it worth
you
it.
know,
Have fun. Have
exactly,
fun. Yeah.
exactly.
Now more like a personal question because starting competing in jiu-jitsu, I started competing in jiu-jitsu in 2019. Yeah, it was my first year competing in jiu-jitsu. I was doing a lot of
Right.
bodybuilding before, but I still, and I'm not sure if this is gonna ever go away. You still a lot of, I get a lot of nervous before the match. Like 30 minutes before the match, I start to have those butterfly in my stomach, and it's not really pump. It's more like anxious. As soon as
Yeah.
I am in the mat, it calms down. But before,
Right.
it's crazy. Do you have the same thing?
Oh yeah. I mean, if anything, I get more worried if I'm not nervous because then I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I don't care enough. I mean, I've definitely gone through the growing phase where the nerves cause me to burn out right before competing. But now what I've done is I get nervous, but then I remind myself, well, why are you nervous? Okay, I want to do well. I don't want to get my butt kicked. And it's like, well, do you have to compete? And you're like, well, no, I want to compete. And then your brain's like, well, you want to do this, so why aren't you excited?
Yeah.
And so for me, I just start getting all like, peppy and excited, and I smile. I'll smile fighting, and that totally weirds people out. Because we have to remember, we don't have to compete. We're
Right.
choosing to, and especially now with what's going on in the world, how wonderful of a privilege we have where we can use our bodies and athleticism and just show off our martial training. Not a lot of people get to or want to do that. So to me, I just use the nerves to remind myself why I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, that's a great strategy. I'm pretty sure I will try to remember that next time because prior to that, it's just ridiculous to a point that every time that I'm waiting those 30 minutes prior to the fight, I always say, "Oh, this is gonna be my last tournament. I cannot handle this anymore. This is horrible." But then as soon as it finished, I was like, "Well, I want to do it again."
Exactly. Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's just a roller
Yeah,
coaster.
but I think it come with time. You manage this better, and you've been doing this for way longer than me. Probably more than 10 years already.
I've been doing black belt level competition since 2007. Yeah, so 13
Wow,
years now.
that's a lot.
But I mean, like, you do presentations and
Yeah, but
stuff. There's probably
it's a different feeling because no one is trying to hurt me. Yeah.
that's that is
There
true.
is this aspect, it's like bodybuilding. People ask, "You never got nervous to compete bodybuilding?" No, I'm just flexing. I'm just in the stage flexing and smiling. It's fun. It's actually a moment of celebration. To me, bodybuilding was always a moment to celebrate all the hard work that you've done throughout the prep, all
Right.
the training and everything. So to me, when I was on stage, it was a moment to show the work that I've done, right? With
Exactly.
jiu-jitsu and judo, I compete judo for the first time this year in March, in March
Yeah.
before the COVID. It was the same thing. I was super nervous, but I was less nervous than jiu-jitsu, and I remember being less nervous than jiu-jitsu because to me it was like, well, if I'm able to take this guy down, the fight is over. In
Right.
jiu-jitsu, I take the guy down. We are just getting started.
Yeah.
That's where it really started on the floor, right? So judo
Yeah.
to me was better. I won my first competition, but it was like the first match was like 1 minute, and the second one was like 1 minute and 15.
Right.
Because as soon as you take it down, it land on the back, it's over, right? So I think that it was less. I was less nervous on the judo than on jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and like you said, with experience, experience builds confidence where you have to know you can handle being under that kind of pressure for an extended time frame. And sometimes in the lack of experience, you have to use visualization at that point, and it's not just blowing smoke up your butt. It's like you visualize being successful every time. You do that every night before bed. You write it down, and it does become easier over time.
This strategy that I heard many times Anthony Robbins saying that
Mhm.
visualization. So you use a lot of visualization.
Oh yeah, and I mean a big contributor to me medaling at the Pan American Championships was getting to interact with a coach, Akira Fukuda, with a lot of his psychology, and a lot of it was with writing, a lot of it was with power statements, being able to control physiological aspects of yourself, like your heart rate. That was a game changer. And so I'm kind of having to use that again, even though I don't formally have a sports psych coach now, because that is a huge aspect in high level competition that people take for granted.
Wow, even the heart rate you are able to control, basically. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And probably you are just transferring all this knowledge to your students right now, right? Because I bet that some of those students will be the first time on the competition, right?
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing though, you might tell them, it's like when you tell your kid to do something and then someone else tells your kid to do the same thing and they listen to them.
Is it,
You kind of,
isn't that frustrating?
yeah,
Because
exactly.
I talked to my daughter, she does judo and jiu-jitsu, and I talk to her, and same thing that the coach says, but when the coach says, "Whoa, it was the coach that said," like,
Yep.
yeah, coaches,
You just learn
coaches,
to accept.
coaches have a superpower over the kids, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
They,
uh, the the school that you teach today is not the same as the one that you compete in the past, right? Like,
correct.
how long you been on this one now?
I've been teaching at this current school now since September 2018. So,
Oh, a little bit more than 2 years, right?
yeah.
And this is in Plano, right?
Yeah.
Is it called Plano Karate or is a different name?
That's like that's like the easy website to get to, planokarate.com. I'll show you here. It's a Texas Association of Shotokan Karate.
Mm-hmm.
So is Shotokan's the specific style, and we're part of the Japan Karate Shotorenmei, so JKS Federation, which is located in Japan, even though they're in lockdown right now. And we're like everyone else. We're trying to stay strong and keep going despite COVID.
Have you
So
ever been there, Maxine, in Japan?
I went once, and that was my last international competition in October 2018, and it was amazing.
Did you visit any main place in Japan related to karate?
I went to the main square. I think what is it, Shinoda Square,
Hmm.
which is like the equivalent of Piccadilly Circus or Times Square, and it was amazing. I gotta admit, I want to go back. The moment everything's over with COVID, I'm gonna go back.
Yeah, because I was watching this weekend, the IP Man. I'm not sure if you ever watched that movie.
Yeah,
It's amazing. I love that. I love that movie. Mainly the first one, and when they were IP Man is Wing Chun, and
yeah,
there was a moment that he fought Japanese karate, and it was amazing. It was beautiful to see.
yeah. There's a lot of good schools, not just in Texas, but in the country, and then of course internationally. So
And how is our team, US team, compared to other teams in the globe? Because, for example, US Judo is really good, but we never really had success on the Olympics
mhm.
for men. Female, we had some really good judokas female,
Right,
but not men. It's really hard. We
right.
never really actually got a medal on the Olympics. We got really close, but never really got a medal. I never
Yeah.
won a medal, a gold medal.
I would say right now there's one female athlete. She's qualified for the Olympics currently. Her name's Sakura Kokomai in kata, which is the forms. You know, she's ranked high enough where she's solidified her spot for the most part. And I've known her since she was 14 years old. Her work ethic is beautiful. You know, it's why she's who she is today as an athlete. There are a couple other athletes that are like close in the ranking, but they don't quite have enough points yet. So they're waiting to go to whatever final Premier League event will be in 2021 where they can earn points, or they'll all have to go to this last qualification tournament in Paris where it's going to be 9 fights to determine who can get the final seats to go.
But the kata is only almost like a demonstration, right?
It is, but the amount of training they do for it is pretty intense, you know, and there's still a lot of athleticism. And, you know, don't watch the old Karate Kid movies for kata, because the way they do kata now, you know, it's either a bit over the top or it's very genuine and beautiful, you know. And I'm really happy to say that like Sakura is a great representative of what Japanese karate kata should look like.
Awesome. Well, Maxine, it was awesome chat with you. I'm so glad that you are going back to compete again. I always enjoy looking at the pictures, because by the pictures we can see how intense you are, probably more than anyone else that I've seen pictures. You know, it looks like you are angry. You are going for like with anger. It's amazing to see those pictures. So hope that you get a good placing this upcoming weekend. Make sure to post updates from the competition, and if you have when you have the website that will stream, make sure to share as well. I'll love to watch the competition on Sunday. That'll be great.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate the support. And again, thank you for your time.
No, absolutely. I am the one to be honored here. Sensei Maxine, thank you very much. And again, good luck, and see you next time, my friend.
Anytime. Stay strong.
You too. Take care.